Casimir was not your typical dragon. For starters, he was only 5 feet tall, snout to tail, which meant children often mistook him for a stuffed toy come to life. It didn't help that he was bright turquoise, with scales shimmering like a swimming pool's water under a hot summer sun. Unlike the fearsome fire-breathing creatures of mythology, Casimir was a water dragon. He looked far more at home in a koi pond than a treasure-filled cave. If you were to pass him on the street, you wouldn't flee in terror. You'd probably tug your friend's sleeve and whisper, "Is that a wizard's failed shape-shifting spell?" But water dragon or not, Casimir had hopes and dreams just like everyone else. In his younger days, he'd envisioned living in a crystal blue lake, far away from prying human eyes. Instead, he ended up in the city, where the only bodies of water were the municipal pool, various puddles after a downpour, and the ornamental fountain outside City Hall. For some reason, most local aquatic attractions prohibited large reptiles from dipping in. There was talk about safety concerns, sanitation issues, and the dreaded, he might scare the children to death. And so, Casimir became the misunderstood creature at the end of the block, rumored to eat neighborhood cats, which was categorically false, as he was a strict vegetarian when not munching on the occasional fish. One steamy June afternoon, the sun blazing overhead, Casimir passed by the city's public swimming pool. It was the biggest, busiest place around, and from the moment he saw the glimmer of chlorinated water, he felt drawn to it. A gaggle of laughing kids rushed inside, beach balls in hand, while parents trailed behind with towels draped over their arms. Casimir stood on his tiptoes, tipquaws, and peered through a chain-link fence. The turquoise water called to him. He was so engrossed that he barely noticed the stout man in a polo shirt wave at him from the entrance. "Hey, you there! You like water?" Casimir turned around, half expecting someone else to be behind him, but the man was beckoning directly at him. Yes, I do," Casimir stammered, inching forward. "Excellent," the man said. He had a warm, if somewhat sweaty smile. "Name's Frank Marino, pool manager. You any good at swimming?" Casimir rubbed a foreclaw behind a curved horn. "Swimming is my specialty. I'm a water dragon, you see." He tried to keep it humble, but his voice swelled with pride. Frank nodded, then pointed to a large banner that stretched across the fence. "Lifeguards wanted," scrawled in thick red letters. "We're short on staff," Frank said. "Season's just opened and all these families need someone keeping an eye on the pool. You interested?" Oh, the thought of it made Casimir's heart flutter. He would be allowed, dared, even, to spend his day near water. But could they really want a water dragon as a lifeguard? People usually found reasons to turn him away. Nonetheless, he managed to croak, "I'd absolutely love it." Frank raised an eyebrow, noticing Casimir's unusual features, the ridges of fins on the dragon's arms, his shimmering scales, and the dorsal crest that would normally strike terror in village peasants. Oddly enough for Frank, it all seemed quite normal. Maybe a sign that he'd been around chlorine for too many years. Or maybe, at heart, Frank just wanted to give everyone a chance, no matter how many teeth they had. "Listen," he said, "I can't promise anything. You'll have to demonstrate basic rescue skills, CPR knowledge, that kind of stuff. But if you can pass those, I don't see why not." Casimir's eyes lit up. "What do I need to do?" "Swing by tomorrow for a tryout, and bring your game face or snout." The next day, Casimir arrived at the pool gates an hour early, wearing neon swim trunks. He tried to look professional, though water dragons typically didn't wear clothes. But he had studied the human lifeguards milling around last weekend, and they all wore some stylish uniform, so neon trunks it was. That morning, he'd also polished his turquoise scales for extra shine. He wanted to make the best possible impression. Frank was running an informal test in front of a small committee of staff members. They all stared at Casimir. He was used to that. The pool was nearly empty, a thin fog rising off the surface from the morning's cool air. "First test, buddy," Frank called. "Show us how you'd handle a jacuzzi rescue." A jacuzzi rescue?" Casimir repeated, his voice echoing around the tile walls. "Yeah, sometimes people faint in the hot tub, or a kid gets stuck because the bubbles scare him. Let's see how you talk them through it and then show a demonstration of the rescue technique." Casimir's reptilian lips twisted into an awkward grin. Sure. He approached the small hot tub, which steamed invitingly. The committee and some early morning lap swimmers gazed at him. Casimir felt a little self-conscious. He decided to demonstrate his knowledge meticulously. He hopped in, his scales immediately warming in the frothy water. "Hello there," he boomed in a kindly voice, picturing a victim in distress. "Don't panic. I'm here to help you get to the edge. Just hang on to my fin and I'll pull you to safety." With that, he dove under, his fins cutting through the swirling jets with ease. A couple of seconds later, he emerged on the other side. Water splashed all around and he quickly scaled the hot tub's edge, pulling his imaginary rescuee behind him. One of the staff members snorted with laughter. It was a bit dramatic, but Frank was nodding in approval. "Impressive technique," Casimir said. "And you didn't even scald yourself in there," Casimir wagged his tail, sending a stray wave over the tiles. "I love warm water," he said with a goofy grin. "Next test, show us your backstroke," Frank said, crossing his arms. Now the rest of the staff, a lifeguard named Terry and a teenage volunteer named Hector, joined in. They'd apparently never tested a water dragon's swimming prowess before. Casimir hopped off the diving board into the big pool, then turned over onto his back. With surprising grace, he churned his arms in perfect sync, tail propelling him in small bursts. His crest parted the surface of the water like a powerboat. He made it from one end of the pool to the other with lightning speed, all while humming a jaunty tune to prove how comfortable and relaxed he was. 10 out of 10, Terry said, scribbling on her notepad. Possibly 11 out of 10, if that existed. Casimir beamed. Thank you. And so it went. The demonstration continued with tests for treading water, diving for a fake rescue dummy at the bottom of the pool, and explaining how to use the rescue tube. Casimir aced them all, although his scaly tail occasionally caused comedic chaos, like when he tried to pick up the rescue tube and knocked over a folding chair that toppled into the pool. Frank scratched his beard, but never lost that twinkle in his eye. By noon, the staff had seen enough. "All right," Frank announced in front of everyone. "I'm convinced. Welcome aboard as our new lifeguard. You'll start tomorrow." Casimir's dragon heart soared. He thanked them profusely. On his way out, he nearly crashed into the fence in excitement. He had a job, an official job with a city uniform, though they'd have to special order a large t-shirt with tail holes, and the chance to do what he loved, be in and around water. This felt like fate. The next day dawned bright, the sky an endless blue. Casimir arrived at the pool wearing his brand new sleeveless lifeguard shirt with the letters Lifeguard across the front in bold red. The city council had insisted on something to distinguish him from any other dragons that might wander in, which seemed slightly offensive, but hey, a job was a job. Towels draped over his shoulder, he settled onto the tall lifeguard chair, a precarious perch for a short water dragon with a winding tail. He moved around, trying to position his tail so it wouldn't poke any passers-by below. He ended up letting it dangle down like a rope. Then he scanned the water like he'd been trained. At first, some pool patrons stuck to the edges, uncertain about the scaly presence. A few kids yelled, "Mommy, is that a real dragon?" while others squealed in delight. Cool! Having a mythical creature as your lifeguard might be the best summer story to share with your friends. Parents were more skeptical at first, arms crossing, eyes narrowed. Yet, after the first hour of normal pool activity with no catastrophic mishaps, the tension eased. Casimir just sat quietly, occasionally calling out to a wobbly swimmer. "Hey, you okay over there? Let me know if you need help." Then there were the comedic moments. A father who tried to do a cannonball near Casimir's lifeguard chair, only to slip and inadvertently deposit a wave of water right onto the dragon's face. Casimir coughed, water dripping from his horns. The father apologized profusely, but Casimir just hooted with laughter. He didn't melt, or hiss, or blow fire. He was actually quite chill. By late afternoon, the pool was lively. Kids hopped in and out, towels strewn everywhere. The snack bar sold sticky popsicles. Music from the overhead speakers kept it festive, and up in his perch, Casimir was in his element. If the sun got too hot, he dipped his tail in the water for relief. People started realizing that maybe, just maybe, a benevolent water dragon was the best lifeguard they could ask for. Strong, swift, and watchful. Little by little, the crowd accepted him, and soon, comedic chemistry formed between Casimir and his human coworkers. Terry teased him about how he'd never need a rescue tube. Hector tried to teach Casimir new slang phrases, grinning widely when Casimir repeated them in a gravelly reptilian voice. And Frank? Frank was relieved the city had something to brag about besides the new library sign. He patted Casimir's scaly shoulder daily, telling him he was doing a great job. Still, not everything was sunshine and chlorine. A handful of parents complained that their children were traumatized by the sight of a creature with so many teeth. One mother insisted that her daughter was convinced dragons ate naughty kids for breakfast and demanded the city remove him. Another complained that Casimir sneezed algae. Completely irrational, but rumor traveled fast in a small community. Frank tried to calm them, offering free snow cones or extended pool hours, but the small group persisted. They circulated a petition, "Say no to reptilian lifeguards." Casimir grew anxious when he overheard the rumors. He wanted so badly to be accepted. Every time a suspicious parent scowled, he forced an extra wide, overly friendly grin, which ironically displayed his pointed teeth in an even more alarming fashion. Some kids would shriek in delight, seeing it as a friendly, cartoonish expression, while the parents behind them physically recoiled. It was a comedic scenario. He tried so hard to look approachable that he ended up feeding the rumors. One morning, Casimir arrived to find a small group of protesters outside the entrance, holding signs reading, "No dragons in the pool," and "Mythical creatures equals real danger." Another sign claimed, "Dragon slime in our chlorine?" Casimir slunk past them quietly, avoiding eye contact. Frank had told him not to worry. They had as much right to protest as the kids had the right to swim. Still, Casimir's chest felt heavy. He dreaded the possibility that all this negativity might force him to lose the one job he ever truly cared about. Meanwhile, Terry approached him. "Hey," she said softly, "don't let those folks get to you. They're the same group that complained about loud music at the 4th of July fireworks. They'll tire out soon." Casimir tried to keep his spirits high. "I hope so. I just want to help people swim and have fun." She nodded. "Then let's do that. Why not hold a water safety workshop today? Show the kids how to float, how to do proper strokes, that sort of thing. If more people see your skills, maybe the fear will go away." Casimir brightened. "That's brilliant, Terry. Let's do it." They announced the spontaneous lesson over the pool's loudspeaker. Within minutes, a group of eager kids of all ages splashed toward them, hoping for cool dragon tips. Even some curious parents hovered around the edge to watch. Casimir took center stage, floating in the shallow end. With a big, somewhat toothy grin, he said, "Who wants to learn from a real water dragon?" There was immediate cheering. He showed them how to paddle with their arms, how to time their breath, and how to let water hold them up. And when the kids started clowning around, slapping water at each other, Casimir just calmly parted the water with a flick of his tail, sending a small wave that both scolded and delighted them at the same time. The lesson went on for half an hour, with Terry assisting from the pool deck as he was showing them a demonstration of rescue breathing techniques, on a plastic dummy, of course. A loud commotion erupted at the deep end. Shouts and frantic splashes echoed across the pool. Casimir whipped his head toward the sound. A girl, about 7 years old, was flailing, eyes wide with terror. She drifted into the deep end without a floaty. Her father, one of the protesters from that morning, was on the pool deck pointing and screaming for help, but he didn't know how to swim well himself. Casimir didn't hesitate. In a flash, he tore across the pool's surface, tail churning up a swirl of bubbles behind him. His strong arms scooped the girl before she sank fully under the water. She coughed and gasped, clinging to his scaly neck. Swiftly but calmly, Casimir pulled her to the edge of the pool, lifting her so her father could grab hold. Once the girl's feet touched the deck, she began crying. Casimir hopped out beside her, gently patting her back with a claw. A small crowd gathered, including some of the protesters from outside. The father, who'd been so adamantly against a reptilian lifeguard, found himself face to face with Casimir, who had just saved his daughter's life. Frank rushed over, calling for a towel and offering words of reassurance. The father stared for a moment. Then, quietly, he choked out, "Thank you." He was shaking. You saved her. I'm sorry for everything I said. You're amazing." Casimir lowered his eyes humbly. "I just did what any decent lifeguard would do." It was an emotional moment. Some of the kids clapped. Terry let out a relieved sigh. The group of parents who had been resistant to Casimir seemed to relax their shoulders. Yes, he had a row of sharp teeth, but none of them had been used on the children, which was the main concern they'd harbored, presumably. The father scooped up his daughter, giving Casimir a nod of real gratitude. Word spread quickly of the dramatic save. Over the next few days, something shifted in the community. The protesters soon stopped chanting outside the entrance. A rumor spread that the water dragon at the public pool was a huge. One or two parents still seemed uneasy, but the general consensus spread across the city that this unusual lifeguard actually knew his stuff. Casimir received a heartfelt thank you card from the father and daughter he'd rescued, complete with a handmade drawing of a smiling turquoise dragon. That picture found its way onto the staff break room's bulletin board. Frank pinned it up with pride, patting Casimir on the knee. His shoulder was a bit too high from Frank's vantage point. The city took note as well. One day the mayor swung by in her official capacity, accompanied by a small press entourage. They took pictures of Casimir on his lifeguard chair. "A local legend," the newspaper would read. The mayor even presented him with a shiny certificate in recognition of outstanding service to our community, which Casimir carefully hung in his bedroom at home. And that night, as the pool closed, City Hall's fountain turned turquoise in his honor, thanks to some special water dye left over from a previous festival. Casimir, walking by on his way home, marveled at a fountain that matched his scales. While fame and admiration were pleasant, Casimir cared most about enjoying his day-to-day job. He perfected new ways to keep kids entertained, blowing watery mist rings from his snout, teaching Dragon Splash, which was basically a bigger, more dramatic version of a cannonball. He also spent time educating folks about water safety, especially children. No more floating away into the deep end unawares. Of course, minor mishaps continued. One day, the snack bar ran out of paper cups, so employees used flimsy plastic cups for hot chocolate. Casimir volunteered to help, but he accidentally breathed a chilly mist on them, making the chocolate lukewarm. Another day, he tried to help a toddler who was waddling dangerously close to the deep end, only for the toddler to clamp onto his tail and chew on his scales. The comedic scene ended with Mother and Dragon exchanging wide-eyed apologies. Then there was the time a wayward cat got onto the pool deck. Nobody knew how. The feline was so spooked by the giant scaled creature that it leapt onto a lifeguard tower's rafters, hissing and yowling. The kids watching squealed with excitement, chanting, "Dragon v his cat!" repeatedly. Casimir calmly coaxed the cat down with fish crackers he found at the snack bar, explaining softly that no, he wasn't interested in devouring it. The cat eventually waltzed away, unimpressed but safe. All these daily antics made the pool a popular local hotspot. People came for the diving boards but stayed for the comedic possibility of seeing a water dragon chase off an errant raccoon or blow drying breath on the pool deck. Local families found that, ironically, he was gentler than some of the human lifeguards they'd encountered in the past. After all, Casimir had been misunderstood his whole life and had developed an extra sense of empathy. At the end of summer, when the city prepared to close the pool for maintenance, Frank called an all-staff meeting. They gathered under a patio umbrella out of the late August sun. A hush fell. Then Frank stood, clutching a small plaque. "This has been a record-breaking season," he began. "We had more sign-ups for community programs than ever before, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we also hired a new lifeguard who, let's just say, isn't your typical applicant." Everyone chuckled, eyes turning toward Casimir. The water dragon tried to look modest, scanning the ground as though it held a fascinating secret. Frank cleared his throat. "Casimir has been a model lifeguard, quick to act, thorough with safety measures, and excellent with the kids. He's kept a positive attitude despite protesters and being called words like reptile menace and steam-breathing fiend, among other things. Laughter rippled through the group. We owe him a big round of applause, so on behalf of the entire staff, we're presenting him with a small token of our appreciation. Casimir Calm here, buddy. Blushing, a shade of sky blue, Casimir waddled up. Frank handed him the plaque, a polished piece of wood with a golden plate, engraved, "To our water dragon Lifeguard, for outstanding bravery, kindness, and unsinkable spirit." Casimir's claws trembled. He had never felt more accepted. He recalled his younger self, pining for a place to belong. The small group clapped as he held the plaque aloft in wonder. "Thank you," he managed, his usually booming voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I could find a home here, but you all have made me feel like family." Terry cheered. Hector gave him a thumbs up. Frank clapped him on the back. For a splendid moment, everything felt right in the world, just like a perfect dive into cool, clear water. When the day came for the pool to close for the season, banners were put away, lifeguard stands were cleaned, and the final swimmers said their goodbyes. A few regulars, especially kids, shed genuine tears at the thought of not seeing Casimir every afternoon. One little boy asked for Casimir's autograph, to which Casimir awkwardly spelled out his name with watery trails from his claw. The next day, the gates locked for the final time until spring. Casimir gazed over the still water, scaly chest tight with nostalgia. He sighed a gentle swirl of mist. The job was done, for now. News of his successful lifeguard tenure spread throughout the city and beyond. The protesters, once so vehement in their opposition, had vanished. Even they had to concede that maybe, just maybe, they judged him too quickly. Meanwhile, Frank and the rest of the staff had big plans to invite Casimir back the next summer. Rumor had it the city council was discussing expansions, including a brand new children's splash pad. And guess who they wanted to consult for design ideas? Casimir strolled away from the pool that day, the sun dangling low on the horizon. His tail swished behind him contentedly. He could hardly believe that after so many doors slammed in his scaly face, the city's biggest doors to, well, gates, to be precise, had opened for him. The road ahead seemed full of possibilities. Perhaps he'd volunteer at the local aquarium during the off-season. Maybe he'd teach advanced water safety classes year-round. The options stretched out like an endless blue ocean. But for now, he was simply happy. Happy to belong and happy to do the job he loved. With the plaque tucked under his arm, he paused at the crumpled "Lifeguards Wanted" banner lying near the trash. He picked it up gently, reflecting on how that sign changed his life. He folded it carefully, deciding to keep it as a memento. Then, humming a cheerful tune, he headed down the quiet street, scales shimmering under the setting sun. Casimir was a water dragon lifeguard, and everyone knew it. And for once, that was a good thing. There he was, striding to the next adventure, no longer an outcast, but a hero in red trunks. If dragons could grin from ear to ear, Casimir did exactly that, leaving wet footprints and a hint of chlorine fragrance in his wake. It was the smell of acceptance, of achievement, and of new beginnings. And the next time you visit that city's public pool, swimming laps or lazily floating under the summer sun, don't be surprised if the lifeguard perched above you is short, scaly, and turquoise. Don't be alarmed if he winks with a toothy smile and waves a claw in greeting. That, friends, is just Casimir, the friendliest, bravest water dragon around, always ready to save the day with a splash. If you're lucky, he might even show you his backstroke. Just do try not to stare at his teeth too long. After all, they're only scary if you don't know the heart behind them.